keeping the Borderlands. Gary Gygax presented a moral dilemma.
Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I'm going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. I have some guests today. We have Mark and we have Gonzo from Dungeon Class. And we're going to talk about moral dilemmas. And I'm going to start it off with what is a moral dilemma, and then we're going to get Mark to sort of talk to you about why we would have them, and then Gonzo is going to give us some examples to feed your imagination, make your mind go somewhere else. So what is an ethical moral dilemma? It's like a paradox. It's a decision-making problem or issue that we have to deal with. And what's happening here is we have a set of moral or ethical values or codes, and either two or more of these are at loggerheads or in contrast, and we can only honor one of them. One of them has to be, or more than one of them needs to be, set aside or adjusted in some way. We can't complete all of them. And when we're doing a moral dilemma, the idea being that we don't have an out. There is either option A or option B, rather than there being all the options that a players might want, which is option C, D, and E, so they don't have to deal with the moral dilemma. We need to maintain that. A transgression between right and wrong, and really what we're trying to do is look at the fact that there's not always a black and a white answer to something. And this is usually an issue for people, moral dilemmas, when they view moral and ethical values as an absolute. And we're looking more of a situation where we're trying to get them to understand with regard to maybe changing the way we view our moral code and prioritizing them in some way. And that's sort of where the moral dilemma comes from, is having to actually look at our moral and ethical codes in a lot of detail. So, Mark, would you like to cover the next bit?
Yeah, so why we want to put them in Dungeons and Dragons, and really, you know, a lot of us, we're familiar with the murder hobo mentality that we just kill everything, you know, but it kind of makes them want to role play a bit more. So like it forces them to. You have a situation where the paladin's like, no, we can't just straight up kill those people, and the rogue in the group is saying, oh yeah, we need to do that. So right, why not? And the barbarian is like, oh, where do I cut him next? You know, so but there's this role play has to happen for that dynamic to work, and so it really forces them to kind of stop and make a decision, because it's not so cut and dry. It's not like, if we do this, it's great. We'll kill everybody and walk out of here. They're gonna have to stop and think about their decisions. So, what else you got, Gonzo? What do you think?
Well, I mean, not only better role play, but one of the best parts is that because there's a dilemma in front of them that they have to make a choice that isn't simple or clear, right, there's going to be some creative problem solving. It isn't just barge through, kill everything, take it and go. They're going to have to make a decision that may have a cost to it, maybe a sacrifice involved, or maybe something that half the party doesn't want to do. And so that creates out-of-the-box thinking, which is always fun to watch when you're dungeon mastering at your table. I don't know about Fred, but I like when my players come up with answers to things that I could not have thought of, and they always do.
Yeah.
So it's almost funner just to present the problem and see how they're going to get out of it, because what you think they're going to do never happens, and this really breeds that. It breeds that creativity when it comes to problem solving.
Well, and also you're not gonna solve that murder hobo thing right away. Obviously, you're gonna have to. They're gonna throughout time, as they face more and more of these moral dilemmas. Right. They start to explore their own moral code as a character. You know, that character. We have alignments, and alignments change, and that's a thing. But what does that do for you? And what do you really hold valuable? And what are your values at? And how it helps explore that. So I think that's what moral dilemmas can really do for you. So
yeah. Yeah, for sure. It helps you rank or prioritize your moral compass as a group and as an individual within that group.
Right.
So you kind of have a ranking system going on there. So and some of the examples, I mean, we see these examples a lot, and you already have them in your game whether you recognize it or not. But if you think of just pop culture, I mean, Walking Dead, the whole show is built upon moral dilemmas. but Dad, we got to help those people. I wish I could, but what if it's a trap? What if they're trying to take our stuff? Or if I do help that whole family, now our resources are divvied up between even more, and we have very little as it is. Like there's a check and balance there that is very difficult decision, and all of us would probably make a different decision. And I think that's what's kind of neat when we watch things like that. In Star Wars, when Darth Vader was watching Luke Skywalker, his son, being basically killed by the Emperor, he had a decision to make. He believed in the dark side. He was all in for that. But something happened where he had to decide, wait, am I all in enough to let my son be killed and seeing the goodness in him and maybe seeing the flicker of goodness that I used to have? So those are moral dilemmas that we see oftentimes. I mean, they use them. That's what makes a good movie or a good show. And we use it in D&D all the time. One of the very first modules that a lot of old schoolers, old guys like us maybe have played, Keep in the Borderlands. Gary Gygax presented a moral dilemma where he gave you some orcs to kill in the Caves of Chaos and kobolds, or as Fred says, kobolds, right? How do you say it?
Who cares? Remember, our phonetics are different. I'm in one part of the world, and we've got Oxford English, and you guys have got modified
lazy English.
US.
Yeah. Let me tell you how you're doing here. So, but he gives us these goblins and stuff to take care of orcs, but there's younglings, there's females. It's an actual living, breathing family tribe. So the players have to make a decision on, well, do we just wipe them out? Do we let the young ones grow up to come back and get us later and become a problem again? We're trying to wipe out the problem. So, I mean, there's some big decisions there, and it's present in D&D all the time. Mark, what do you think?
Yeah, I know one thing that's come up in our game quite a bit is the idea of torturing somebody for information, and that's a thing. And it's like you have somebody that has information that's going to save lives, and do you torture them to get that information out? That really challenges your moral codes. Like I could see the paladin in the group going, "Oh, I'm not cool with this," And one example we did, we may or may not have put a burlap sack over a guy's head and made him think someone was getting murdered right next to him.
That's right.
So that did happen. That may or may not have happened. But that example, and I remember there was a discussion that came up. They were like, "Oh, I'm not okay with that," and the rogue and the barbarian were like, "Well, let's go with this. This is good," And where do I break his hand? So that's a thing. Another from real life, we know from the Titanic, the situations with when it comes to lifeboats, it's like not everyone fit in the lifeboats. There's a maximum amount, and so the issue becomes you put everyone on that lifeboat. Then they could all drown. So you can't put more than it holds, and so it's either someone stays back and probably goes down with the ship, or they hop on there and bring everybody down that could have survived. So those are some really, really tough moral dilemmas. But you can have something kind of similar in your game, although you would have to be at sea, I suppose. But that would be a thing. So do you have any examples, Gonzo, that you could think of, like quick examples, like what it would look like in a game?
So I don't have any examples. I'm clueless.
Perfect. You're not going to give any examples.
No. Your example is yeah, I do, but you have to come over to the Dungeon Class channel to check it out.
There you go.
Let's just say, well, at the end of the day, what all of us are trying to do is have more fun playing Dungeons and Dragons, and we know through our experience that by adding moral dilemmas into the game as a dungeon master, whether it's subtle or not, you're going to have more fun. The players are going to have more fun. They're going to be more engaged. And that, at the end of the day, is what we're all trying to do, is just have a great time playing D&D, and that this can really add to that. Fred, I want to thank you for having us on your channel today. I had a lot of fun preparing this, thinking about moral dilemmas, actually taking the time to recognize how we've already used them in our game and how we can improve in them. And you've been a big part of that. So thank you so much.
Yes, thanks. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Gonzo, and thank you, Mark. You guys did a great job. And I really want everybody to understand that this is just the beginning. If you want to get more information on how to deal with moral dilemmas and how they would look in your game, if you want to look at actual examples, you need to go to Dungeon Class and go and check out their channel with Mark and Gonzo to see what they have for you. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.
Okay, so Mark and I had a conversation before and then earlier today. There are channels on D&D YouTube where we learned the game, the 5th edition version of the game. Like D&D YouTube is big for us because we actually learned the game and were able to broadcast it to our friends and family through YouTube. And there were channels that we connected with and ones we didn't. And I think you're right on, is that we look at it as the why behind the playing. And I know you do. I know even people like Matt Colville has a lot of good videos on the why behind it. The story part. When we do a character creation, we're not talking about pick the dark elf because that gives you +2 to this and +1 to that, and then put that. We don't do those kind of min-maxing things. There's a big part of people that like that, and that's fine. But we're more about the story. The story, because the energy behind that story is where the fun comes from for me and for Mark.
Yep.
And it seems like, Mark, our whole group is that way. Like everyone we play with they don't really care about the min-maxing stuff.
No.
We have a couple that do, but they still, the story is what drives them. And so when we do a character creation or something like that, we're talking about the story and how that character, why is he what he is? Where did he come from, and what are his goals or her goals? And your channel, there's other channels like that kind of breathe that, and there's many that don't. And I don't connect with those that don't personally. Right. Not that I wouldn't do a collaboration video or something, but I wouldn't. There's some that I feel like I can connect with and some that I don't. So it is what it is, but just being honest there.